North Carolina's Constitution declares in Article 1, Section 1, we hold it to be self-evident. In other words, everybody ought to get this. It shouldn't take a lot of learning to understand this.
Yes.
That all persons are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. You can't take them. That among these are life, liberty, the enjoyment of the fruit of their own labor, and the pursuit of happiness. Yes. Article 1, Section 19 declares no person. There's nowhere in our Constitution, Dr. Spearman, where that is qualified. It doesn't say no LGBT person, no straight person, no white person. No person shall be denied the equal protection of laws. And then Article 1, Section 35 says a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is absolutely necessary to preserve the blessings of liberty. In other words, you have to every now and then revisit not what people say when they get in office, not how politicians vote, but what the Constitution actually says. And the Constitution then says it demands that we come and we instruct our legislators. When they forget the fundamental principles of our Constitution, we are called to instruct our legislators. Now, my brothers and sisters, we got to be smart here, because the folk we're dealing with are shrewd.
Yes, sir.
They know what they're doing when they named this bill a bathroom bill, just like they knew what they were doing when they named the voter suppression bill the voter integrity bill.
Yes.
Just like they knew what they were doing when they called themselves right, and they just as wrong as two left shoes. It's about words, because what they want is the headline. Hate Bill 2 is not a bathroom bill. We've said to the media, don't let them play you. It's not a bill to protect women and children from predators. It is a cynical attempt to pit supposedly Christian values against our family's best interests and our faith's highest morality. And in fact, to attempt to call this bill Christian is in fact unchristian. Hate Bill 2 violates the very principle of love of neighbor. Many people supporting it have not even read it. Some legislators got bamboozled. Some that look like me. We tell the whole truth at the NAACP. It doesn't matter. You don't get a pass because you're black. But the NAACP is not a black organization. It's not a white organization. It's not a Democrat organization. It's not a Republican organization. It's a civil rights organization. I love you, I love you, I love you, but how can you say you signed the bill and you didn't even know what was in it? People are being misled and misguided by heretical interpretations of religion. Hate Bill 2 was passed in the spirit of the politics of Jesse Helms reincarnated. Designed to use homophobia, race, and class as political wedge issues. Hate Bill 2 discriminates against the working poor by taking away municipalities' abilities to demand contractors raise minimum wage to living wages, pay vacation and sick leave, and have minority set-asides. Somebody asked me, they said, Grandpa, why do you say this is a racist bill? We didn't see a Klan sign up. I said, that's because you don't understand racism. Racism is not just when you call me the N-word or when you put a sign up. Racism is when you implement policies that have a disparate impact on black, brown people. 54% of the people in this country that make less than a living wage are African American. So when you pass a bill that doesn't allow a city to make their contractors or allow their contractors to pay a living wage, that is disparate impact. That is racism. But not only that, Hate Bill 2 discriminates against the disabled. It discriminates against religion. It discriminates against national origin. It discriminates against people based on their class. It discriminates against young people and old people, because Hate Bill 2 takes away the ability of North Carolinians to file employment discrimination in state court. And Hate Bill 2 targets and discriminates against the LGBTQ community, uses them as a scapegoat, creates a hostile community atmosphere. And it's not about protecting children. My God, to try to use our children as a reason to hate others. How many of you all have children? How many of you think this bill protects your children? No, if anything, this bill teaches our children and feeds our children the poisonous brew of racism, classism, and homophobia, and we will not let our children's minds be contaminated with this mess. This bill is anti-worker, anti-living wage, anti-civil rights, anti-family, anti-women, anti-LGBTQ, anti-Christian, and anti-American. Now let me take a moment, because it's critical here. The nation's looking at us, and we've talked to some of them, even on the national media. They call it the bathroom bill, and we've got to change that narrative. See, they want that narrative, and we can't use their narrative. The provision in this bill against transgender people is bad enough. If that was all that was in there, it would be bad enough. That's right? But remember, Governor Deal of Georgia stood against legislation like that. Nikki Haley in South Carolina stood against. Columbia, South Carolina in 1991 passed the same kind of bill Charlotte did. Even President Obama and Donald Trump are on the same page against the bill as it targets the LGBT community. Now, I've said this to many of the businesses who want to pull out their businesses. We've got to stop playing games as people of conscience. Businesses say they want to come in now and boycott and pull out their business, NASCAR, NBA, and they should. But they should have threatened that before now. Because this legislature didn't get crazy just now. And to my white brothers and sisters, you got to get hip to what's going on. NASCAR, PayPal, and all of them, you should have pulled out when this legislature and governor passed the worst voter suppression bill in the history of this country since the 19th century. Because if we didn't have the voter suppression and the apartheid redistricting, we wouldn't have the legislature we have now. If we didn't have the legislature we have now, we wouldn't have this bill now. We've got to understand it's all connected. We can't just stand together when it's one issue. The same people attacking public education are attacking the LGBT community. The same people attacking voting rights are attacking the LGBT community. The same people attacking environmental justice are attacking the LGBTQ community. The same people that are attacking immigrants are attacking the LGBT community. The same people that are blocking health care are attacking the LGBT community. If they are cynical enough to be together, we must be smart enough to stay together and fight all the time. But let me, as my granddaddy said, drop the plow one more time. Because we need to get this. One author reminds us that Jesse Helms in 1984 was losing by 40 points. We've seen this before. He was running against Jim Hunt. Jim Hunt's numbers were 70 in favorable. Helms were 40. How did Helms attack him? First thing he did was he attacked Jesse Jackson, demonized him politically, and suggested that Hunt had a radical black pack that was being led by Julian Bond that was a Hunt supporter. So he used race and what we call otherization to feed to fear of Southern poor white people. But he also, and gay marriage wasn't even on the table then. Transgender wasn't even on the table. But he knew the fears. So he decided to begin a campaign against gay people in 1984. And he mixed the gay issue and the race issue into a homophobic, racist brew, fed it into the veins of North Carolina politics, came from 40 points down to win by 10 points. And this bill, you gotta talk about it bigger than just a bathroom bill. It's nothing more than a scared governor whose numbers are in the dumps, a legislature that's now down to 17 and 19% in favorability, and they went back and they resurrected the politics of Jesse Helms, designed to divide and stir up false fears for vote. This is not about April, this is about November. Because remember, when did the marriage amendment come out? It was in the springtime before the fall elections. It's a strategy as old as the South. And what has happened is our gay friends and transgender friends have become the new otherization. I would use another word, but y'all not ready for that. And what they do is they collapse African Americans, lesbian, and the gay community, and then they hide behind calls to protect our women and our children to stir up the good old vote. And it didn't start with Jesse Helms. In the 1800s, when there were people who did not like the fact that the Civil War was over and that Reconstruction was happening, they created a movement Dr. Van called the Redemption Movement. Called themselves by a religious name, they act in irreligious ways. And what they did, they began to portray black men in newspapers like the News and Observer as ravishing beasts eager to rape white women. In the Civil Rights Movement, they did the same thing. Jim Crow was being challenged, and they used and conflated race and sexual fear. Daniel McGuire, in her book, The Dark End of the Street, talks about how civil rights workers, black and white, were consistently accused of wanting interracial sex or having homosexual tendencies as being the rationale for their marching. We remember Dr. King's speech, how long, not long, from the speech from the Alabama State Capitol at the end of the Selma to Montgomery March, the same speech that the movie Selma ends with. But very few people talk about how the next week, the Alabama State Legislature passed Act 159, citing that the march from Selma to Montgomery was really about much fornication and young people returning to their respective states, apparently as unexpected mothers, particularly white young people. And Sheriff Jim Clark of Selma, when he published his memoir of the Selma movement, he called it The Raping of Selma. The pattern is clear. Whenever established power brokers have felt threatened, particularly in the South, they stir up sexual and racial fears for political power. They don't care if it's constitutional. They don't care if they lose in the court. because their goal is the politics of fear and division. Like the marriage amendment, they know it's unconstitutional. Like the voting laws, they know it's unconstitutional. Like redistricting, they know it's unconstitutional. Like a tax on teachers, they know it's unconstitutional, but they don't care that the courts will overturn it and it's wasting taxpayer money. All they want is the headlines to feed the fear for the election purposes in North Carolina. And when you know that, then you understand why we can't just talk about this as a bathroom bill. We've got to talk about this as a threat to equal protection under the law for everybody. We've got to talk about it as a threat to our democracy, and we cannot be silent. Especially when our faith and religion is being distorted. Oh my God, true evangelicalism starts with how you treat the poor, and how you treat the least of these, and how you treat the bruised and the broken and the unacceptable. There are 2,000 scriptures in the Bible they put their hand on over there when they swear themselves into office that talks about how you treat the poor, the stranger, people who are different, and people are on the margin. They know that in this state, 1/3 of 2 adults and 2 children families make less than a living wage. 3/4 of families with 1 parent makes less than a living wage. And look at what this legislature's done and why we gonna fight, am I right? Of all the things they could be fixing, they wanna mess and use a bathroom. We've cut education funding lower per capita than Mississippi. They ought to be working on fixing that. We've denied 500,000 working poor people and veterans Medicaid expansion. 346,000 of them are poor white people. We ought to be working on that. We've denied 900,000 families earned income tax credits, families that are poor. We ought to be fixing that. We have 1.6 million poor people in our state, 600,000 are children, and instead of fixing that, they choose to do this. I tell you, we cannot stand for this. This means we must come together. This means we must stand together. This means we must fight back together. This means we must organize together. This means we must protest together. This means we must vote together. This is our moment to say no to hate and to racism and to classism. This must be a movement of love and a movement of justice. This is our moment to reject the politics of fear and division and hate. This is our time. This is our time.